hello. This is the first time that I've been like, yes, I am the normal person here. So onboarding into crypto was already an uphill battle. In the past few weeks, things have become an even steeper uphill battle for reasons that we are all familiar with, especially after sitting through this entire conference. So has this destroyed the potential for mass adoption for platforms like the ones that you all run?
No.
Good answer.
I mean, I guess we've been, I've been in the space since 2013. Lolly's been around since 2018. Seen a lot of cycles over those years. And I think, crypto at this point is just absolutely inevitable. Bitcoin's absolutely inevitable. We're going to have this situation and many more situations that look very similar to it because it's such a new industry, new world that we're building. And every single time something like this happens, there's waves of people that get into it and start to learn the principles of it. So I'm in the camp that any attention is good attention, and that this is not going to be. It's just like a small bump in the road.
Yeah, I can go next. I mean, my perspective is that in general, there's sort of two broad categories of crypto products out there. So there are custodial services, which in the most recent sort of blowups were the ones that were actually the ones to fail. And then there's non-custodial services, which we can get into, but which Phantom falls into, which actually was able to stay the course through all of the turmoil of the past couple of weeks. So I remain very bullish on self-custodial products.
I can speak on behalf of the Web3 fundamentals that are being used in new products being built. With Mad Realities, we were aiming to target the problems that you're already starting to see in the entertainment and media industry around the fact that there are so many people creating online and new forms of content being created. But right now, people have two options as creators for receiving funding, which is either going to a network and giving away control and ownership and like most creative functionality at all around your what you create, or you are at the mercy of algorithms on platforms. And so Web3 is really interesting as like a set of fundamental building blocks to use to think about how you can solve those problems that are already happening in existing industries. And so I think that the Web3 paradigm is really interesting for new forms of creation.
Yeah, and Devin, your company, Mad Realities, is super interesting to me because for people that don't know the background, you built your internet following through NYU Girls Roasting Tech Guys, which was a Clubhouse show. And then from there, you ended up creating Mad Realities, which Paris Hilton's an investor. That's just a thing. This is the second time Paris Hilton has been mentioned today. The first time was like a minute into the conference, and I tweeted about it. That's an aside. But and you've described the platform as the Netflix of Web3. But I feel like in normie circles, when people hear crypto and Web3, it's kind of like, oh, is it a scam? What's going to happen? So why do you brand it as Netflix for Web3 and not like participatory entertainment platform?
Totally. Well, I think in general, the core thesis that we're working with at Mad Realities is what does it look like to make a more decentralized media network or participatory entertainment platform, to your point, like that is how we have been talking about it. And what that means is letting people actually have a say in the types of things, like having an influence on what exists. So what gets funded, what gets renewed, like what types of shows get canceled. People have more of a say in terms of what happens in shows, but then also at the network level. We're thinking about what it looks like to replace an algorithm essentially with people having more of a say and trying to create net better entertainment, like by giving more influence. I think in general, in terms of how we went about the perception of crypto being a scam with Mad Realities was we knew we were interested in building a decentralized media platform, but going to the market, trying to pitch that to people who have no idea what that means or what that looks like is very scary and requires a lot of education and like these extra steps that people, I just don't believe we're ready for. And so the path that we took off of the NYU Girls Roasting Tech Guy show, which, for context for the people that don't know, we ran a show on Clubhouse, me and my 7 friends from college, where it was a bar simulation during the peak of the pandemic. And so in our audio chat room, people would raise their hand, come up on the stage, shoot their shot at someone else in the room, and then we would roast tech guys that they talked about their businesses. And it was really interesting because it was this like radically participatory format that really made community first like content where it was more entertaining based on the people interacting with it. And so all of that was like a really interesting way of saying, hey, we're actually going to do the same thing in the crypto space. We're going to create a participatory show first to set an example to people. And then from there, we can teach the fundamentals of Web3 and the space without having to consistently shove educational content or like information down, but show people that, hey, you can actually give people more creative control and distribution and funding this way.
Yeah, and when you started Mad Realities, we were in a different time in crypto, but now, like, when you pitch the company to people, like, do you explain it as, like, this is Web3, this is on the blockchain, or I always wonder about, for example, like I interviewed the CEO of Patreon, and I asked him about what Patreon's Web3 plans are, and he was like, nothing yet, not spreading rumors. But he was like, if we ever do Web3, then we're going to not have the press release be like, Patreon does crypto. Like, it'll just be like what they're actually building. So I'm curious about like the marketing for all of you. But I guess, I mean, you're the only one that can kind of market it without crypto in the headline, but.
Yeah, I mean, we started by calling ourselves a Web3 company. We still very much would say the fundamentals that we apply are very true to Web3, but to a mainstream audience, to get people into this idea of like a radically more participatory entertainment platform. If you go to madrealities.xyz, it's like our site is very kooky and colorful and uses very like normie language, with the fact that the product should create value in its own with or without being Web3, but then the way that we actually can kick off a real content flywheel is by leveraging some of the existing capital in Web3 to kick off this new format.
Yeah, and then so for Alex and Brandon, you're building in the like finance space, and that's a bit more of a volatile area. Like earlier today on stage, well, virtually on stage, CZ said that the price of Bitcoin is the index of how the crypto industry is doing. And if that's true, then that's not great right now. But what do you think about that?
It's not bad right now. Like I feel like given what just happened, Bitcoin is like up 5% over the last week. It's been a pretty wild week. So I think it's actually a pretty good sign that people are starting to decouple Bitcoin from everything else. And the events that happened over the last week were actually not crypto events. It was a very centralized company making very poor decisions from what it looks like. And it wasn't really Bitcoin. It's like Bitcoin actually fixes this.
Well, how does Bitcoin fix this? Because from my perspective as a normie, it's like, I have the idea that if you want crypto to succeed in the long term, you need to have more widestream adoption. And then if people see like massive crypto exchange that's on the name of the arena down the street just implodes, I feel like that makes people not want to touch crypto.
Yes and no. I think that there's certainly some people that now have a bad taste in their mouth with crypto, given what it was. But when you look at the actual reality of what happened,
Mad reality.
the mad reality of what happened. Nice plug.
Sorry.
I actually feel like if you know the fundamentals of Bitcoin, you know that this is the antithesis. Like Bitcoin was created to combat this exact thing, this centralized finance, and the bad that you can do from it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a pretty warped perception of what crypto is because of the prominence of centralized exchanges, and sort of the main way that people onboarded to this space is by creating a Coinbase account, funding with their bank account, and then buying and selling coins. And honestly, the biggest breakthrough in crypto systems is the concept of self-custody. And so, yeah, it's on all of us to sort of educate users, be able to onboard people into a self-custodial environment where this, level of fraud is frankly not actually possible.
Yeah, and do you think that you need to onboard new users? Like, do you think that crypto has reached enough of a level of adoption? Or, like, how do you go about solving that problem?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think crypto definitely still has a pretty long way to go. I mean, in the backdrop of the entire globe, I think crypto has only penetrated a pretty small amount of users, despite the amount of media attention it gets. And so, yeah, I think we have a long way to go for sure.
Yeah, and as founders that are working in crypto, how do you convince consumers that if they use your products, they're going to have a safe, secure experience?
We took a very different approach in 2018. I think, when I got into the space, it was so difficult to tell my mom about, what I was interested in. And my last company was acquired by Rakuten, biggest cashback company in the US and many parts of the world. And when I was there, it was like my mom loved Rakuten. She was obsessed with eBay. She talked about her big fat check. And so, having been in Bitcoin for a while at that point and seeing how easy it was to distribute cash to people through a cashback system, that's when we came up with the idea for Lolly. And so you said we're kind of in the finance space. I actually look at us as very much like a rewards app first, a shopping app first, because I think if you are just looking at crypto as being a finance tool, you're lumped into this very small percentage of the population of people who are just investors. And a very small percentage of the world are investors, whereas everybody in the world shops. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to attach Bitcoin and crypto as a whole to shopping, which is something everybody does every day, as opposed to something like finance, which people don't do every day. Most people don't do every day.
Yeah. And I mean, I think about my own experience on Twitter, a platform that is having a totally normal time right now. Nothing is going wrong. Everything's great. But I get people in my DMs all the time, Bitcoin reward, whatever. But your company literally is doing Bitcoin rewards. And unfortunately, that does kind of sound like a very scammy phrase, even though what you're doing is not that. But how do you navigate that in a term of marketing?
Yeah, so we figured out the trick to it was, for one, I've been personally working with the biggest brands in North America and many parts of the world for the last 11 years with my last company and now this company. And so 12 out of 30 of our teammates, we built a company together in the payments, rewards, e-com space called Cosmic. And so one of the things we found is, we met all these merchants, we made them hundreds of millions of dollars over those 7 years. And when, I started this company, Lolly, went back to them and, I'd built this trust because we had made them money. And I said, Bitcoin's the future. I'd been talking about it to the biggest merchants in the world since 2013. And I was like, well, what if we did this with a little bit different spin with rewards? It's safe for the merchant, it's safe for the consumer, it's risk-free way to get into crypto. You don't have to go buy it with your hard-earned money. The merchant doesn't have to do any real integration with payments and remittance, which has always been the biggest issue. And so it made it dead simple on the merchant side and dead simple on the consumer side. And because we brought on 1,000 of the biggest merchants in the world that most of the crypto payments companies don't even have, we show this sort of validity to crypto because we made it so easy for both sides.
Yeah, and then with Phantom, I feel when we talk about building for normies, I think a wallet for Solana is maybe a bit past the normie level. So what's your approach to wading through all of the bad press around crypto and proving what you're building?
Yeah, totally. I think it all comes back to the concept of self-custody and trying to solve the problem of onboarding people to custody their own funds. And so, yeah, like I was saying, unfortunately, a lot of people get a warped perception of what crypto is through sort of their onboarding experience with Coinbase and other centralized exchanges. But yeah, our job is really to show the world that, hey, a Web3 self-custody product doesn't need to be that different from a normal financial product. So, for example, right now in the Web3 space, customer support is almost like an afterthought, pretty much, and actually also pretty much borderline negligent. So the main way that you do customer support in Web3 is to basically put someone into a Discord and ask them to talk to a moderator or figure things out. And what ends up happening is they end up getting targeted for phishing. So that's one of the very first things that we tackled, was basically creating a professionalized customer support org that is akin to something that you would find in the Web 2.0 world, so to speak. And so, yeah, I think our job is to really show that's honestly doesn't need to be that different.
So when you mention like onboarding through Coinbase, so you're saying that like because there's not as much customer support, is that why you think it's not as good of an onboarding tool, or like what do you mean by that?
Coinbase? No, I'm saying what I meant was that most people's first impression or first experience with crypto is through a centralized exchange. And that's because these more Web3 crypto native ways of onboarding through a wallet is very scary. There's a lot of sharp edges. And so yeah, at Phantom, we think a lot about how to make that direct to self-custody experience as safe as it can be. One of which of those things is having a professionalized customer support org.
Yeah, I think that also kind of goes back to the question of trust, because I know like a company like Coinbase, people will think like, okay, they're a publicly traded company. Like you see the name in the Super Bowl commercial. Speaking of which, then there was the FTX Super Bowl commercial, but that's separate. But it feels like the average consumer might be more inclined to start from a centralized space. So how do you convince them otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think the world's greatest example literally happened right in front of our eyes a couple of weeks back, and I think it's just a matter of education. So people don't realize that what they're doing when they send money to a centralized exchange is essentially completely delegating trust over their money and assets to a third party. And yeah, for a consumer, it's really like just putting your money into a black box and hoping that at some point you'll be able to withdraw it. And yeah, that's why like this proof of reserves concept has been really coming up in the past weeks, where a lot of these centralized custodial entities now are scrambling to figure out to prove that they have enough reserves to back all of their assets. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's really just kind of showing that those types of structures are fallible, and there's actually solutions out there today where you can prevent that.
And to add to that a little bit too is like when we look at Coinbase and these centralized services, they're very fiat constrained and geographically constrained. One of the cool things about what Brandon's built with Phantom, by the way, Phantom is like the #1 Solana wallet by far for anyone who doesn't know. And what's really cool is like you can be anywhere in the world, 8 billion people, 4 billion with an internet connection, and you can use Phantom. If you're trying to use Coinbase, you have to make sure that you have a bank account, that you can move money in, that they work in your country, that your country hasn't shut it off. Anybody can use these decentralized services. And so I think with NFTs in particular, which they're both working on, anyone in the world can like buy a JPEG and hold it, and it's taught them about self-custody in a way that I think the centralized exchanges never did.
Yeah, and Devin, even though Mad Realities isn't in the finance space, do you find that people in your community are talking about these things, and like, what's your approach to all this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say in terms of building trust, I mean, we started as an NFT project. Our first go-to-market was building a dating show that was funded by NFTs that were roses. And I think this is like a simple answer, but in terms of building trust around why it's safe and you can actually believe that Mad Realities will deliver on what we will say we will, is that we promised a scoped project to begin with, and we delivered on it. I think something that was interesting in the NFT space was all of these projects that would rise and fall with these crazy roadmaps promised. And so I think in terms of being very intentional about the phases that you introduce and what you promise, you don't need to promise the world. You can promise an entertaining experience to begin with, and then on that, build that trust and relationship over time. I would say, too, in terms of just what it looks like to onboard, I mean, we take a different approach in onboarding people into crypto, and that is create an experience or a brand that someone wants to identify with, start top of funnel with something like entertainment, which is free to watch, free to consume, and then the more involved you want to get into influencing the universe, the more deep down the funnel you can go into. First, you might want to be able to vote on what shows get a renewed season or who makes it onto a show. But then from there, the deeper you get, we actually have a lot of people who get excited about the mechanics that are possible from a more technical standpoint and what it would look like to open source and think about like media protocols. And so you can go deeper down the funnel, starting with like a very light, simple introduction and building trust with each thing that you deliver.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then another question I have is that since you're all crypto founders, there is an incentive personally for you to want crypto to succeed, which, I mean, it would be worrisome. Every founder wants their industry to succeed, but especially in crypto, and this is something that people are investing in. People are like, hey, should I buy Bitcoin? Should I buy ETH? These are questions that my friends ask me just because I'm in tech. So how do you separate your company from, like, how do you develop trust when you have a personal incentive to want this space to grow?
I think overwhelmingly, I mean, you see, the events of this week, and I think it's shows some of the negative people that are in the space. I would say like 99% of the founders I meet in the space are in it. We say like in it for the tech. Yes, like there has been incredible gains, and friends have become billionaires, basically overnight, and there's just no other industry like it. We're all probably, very much incentivized to, be pro whatever coin we're behind or whatever. But at the end of the day, like this technology that is like truly changing the world, it's democratizing finance, it's increasing financial literacy. Like, when have we ever been part of the conversations where we're literally, as a society, talking about monetary policy and access to financial inclusivity and being connected on a commerce level with 8 billion people? Like, this is changing the entire world, and it's really tough to I know this sounds crazy. I really don't even think about the price anymore. I get asked all the time by the Normies about the price, but it's like the most uninteresting thing. It is what brings people in, no doubt, but this is like I'm like 9 years in, and I'm still just like in awe of what this is doing for the world in the positives that it is.
But then also at the same time, like, if somebody invested $1,000 in Bitcoin this time last year, that's probably like $200 now. I don't know the exact math, but like, don't you worry about people that might be like, oh, I heard about this cool new Bitcoin thing, let me buy some Bitcoin, and then now suddenly it's so depreciated?
Part of why we built what we did is because I was tired of friends getting into the space and being turned off by price, and like losing money in the short term. In the long term, most people have made money, but part of why we built this way for people to legitimately earn Bitcoin for free is so that they wouldn't be mad about the price. They can just get Bitcoin for free when they shop as they normally would. This is money that they wouldn't already have been getting. And so it's all gravy. Like, all this Bitcoin that the people have been earning is just going straight into their wallet. It's all good. They're not mad if it goes down. They're excited when it goes up. It has like this nice like cyclical nature. I do think the ups and downs are real. What we call it in the industry is like, these bear markets build like diamond hands. People who are learning the fundamentals during the ups and the downs are the ones who hold on. And historically, if you hold on to crypto, it's gone up over time. So diamond hands are good for the space.
Yeah, just +1 to what Alex said. I think, just to push back, I think if you've bought any asset in the last year, you're probably down 50 to 80%, not just on Bitcoin. And I think the reason why anyone starts a company, everyone who started a company in the history of business, I think, is financially incentivized for their company to do well as industry. But yeah, I think it's just important to remember why we're all here in crypto, and it is about increasing access to financial markets across the world, creating a truly global economy. And yeah, that's what's been driving me through all the price action.
Cool. And to wrap things up, what's something that you're particularly excited about in crypto right now? Like something that is unique from what you're seeing other people build. Like I think of like Mad Realities as an example of like, I love reality shows. I'm a normie. I'm like, yeah, I want to watch this thing on YouTube. Cool.
I'm excited about a lot of things. I personally, I mean, that sounds kind of like weird. I love bear markets. I feel like
Weird.
you see like the real builders. Like during bull markets, everybody's grifting or building or talking too much. It's like during bear markets, you see the people who are like in it for the tech, in it for the fundamentals, building like very real things. And so I think like gaming is like one of the most exciting spaces right now because like games take a very long time to build and like years to build. And so these gaming founders that came in 3-4 years ago are now starting to build or launch these prototypes. And so gaming is going to, I mean, now games are starting to come out that were started 3-4 years ago. And I'm an investor in both their companies, an investor in a lot of gaming companies, and I'm just seeing like a new gaming company a week at this point come out. And an average successful game has few million users, and some of the most successful games have hundreds of millions of users, things like Fortnite and Minecraft. So when you start to think about these existing incumbents and these new games that are emerging, putting pressure on each other to get into Web3 because it's the best monetization for a game is Web3, and we've already starting to see that. It's just inevitable. Like you're going to have users, like hundreds of millions of users that come in over the next couple of years because of gaming. And so it's just going to be incredible what it does for, I think, all of our businesses of just bringing people in that playing games every day is going to be unbelievable. So definitely the space, a piece of the space to watch.
Cool. Wait, real quick. For you two, do you like bear markets?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the noise gets washed out. As we just, I think, witnessed in the last couple of weeks. So honestly, it makes it a bit easier to stay focused and not necessarily need to pivot into something that is sort of like flavor of the month. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I think if you look at all of these projects, again, that rose and fall in this last cycle, especially in the NFT space, so many were because people were focused on just staying at the surface and getting things out and promising things, but never going deeper because it was always about being just close enough to go to market. And so when you actually don't have that attention of always what's next, what's happening, and people calm down for a bit, that's when you get to build the real value that gets to come back in the next cycle way stronger. And so, yeah, there's definitely been, I think, a lot of projects on the surface that looked really exciting, but it's going to be that next round that they reach their full potential.
It's also, I think, the true test, I think, for all of us. We've already seen it with companies like Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, of crypto has very much like seasonal businesses. If you have to figure out ways to make money during bear markets. And so I think one of the cool things about all of our companies is like everybody shops all the time. So hypothetically, people should be using Lolly all year round. And so you really get a good baseline for what our customers actually want and are doing. People should always be watching reality shows and media and being entertained.
Entertainment does really well in bear markets.
Yeah. So I think all of our businesses should hypothetically get a better baseline during a bear market, which is a nice thing if you're trying to build a real business.
Great. Well, I see the clock ticking down, so I think we're done. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.